Hi, this is Anna Bevan Gravely with NCFREE, and I am joined by Chief Justice Cheri Beasley, who is running for Chief Justice in the fall. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you'd like to share with our members before we get started?
Thank you for having me, Anna. I just would like for the members to know that I have served as a judge now for 21 years, as Chief Justice for more than a year and a half, on the Supreme Court for 7 years. I was a trial judge and Court of Appeals. And I'm excited about the possibility and hopefully the probability to continue serving as Chief Justice.
Awesome, thank you. So we're just going to dive into the questions. Which one of the current or recent U.S. Supreme Court justices best reflects your judicial philosophy?
You know, that question is tough. I have to tell you, I received my LLM or Master's of Laws in Judicial Studies from Duke University Law School 2 years ago. And one of my professors was Justice Alito. And I thoroughly enjoyed studying under him. It was a fantastic class. And, you know, it's so interesting that these days there is really a modicum of celebrity attached with Supreme Court justices, unlike in the past. And so, I mean, certainly there are lots of names that we know, but as I thought about this question, the one name that we rarely hear is Justice Breyer. I mean, he just kind of does his work. He was confirmed at a time when there were, the hearings were not contentious. They were bipartisan selections and affirmations of these justices. And he has just really been sort of a quiet stalwart as in his service to the court and to the nation. And I really do appreciate, I can't say his judicial philosophy because I don't really know what that question really means. I think it's the term seems to offer a soundbite as to how judges think. And when you think about the fact that we're making decisions about people's lives, I mean, it's hard to really contain how we apply the rule of law in a soundbite. And so I would say that I don't always agree with him, but I would be afraid if there were any justice that I always agreed with, because I think that the live cases that come before our court require deep thinking, and we've got to be mindful of that.
Yeah. At the risk of opening up a can of worms here, how would you describe your judicial philosophy?
You know, I would say that I've worked really hard over the last 21 years as a trial judge and as appellate judge on 2 courts to be fair and impartial in the matters that have come before me. I mean, this is my 5th election, my 3rd statewide election, my 1st partisan election. All of my other elections were nonpartisan. And I've never seen a case where I thought, gee, I wonder if that party's a Democrat or Republican. It's really important to me to be thinking about justice in terms of the applicability of the rule of law, and making sure that we are interpreting the laws that are made by the General Assembly or the Constitution, either state or federal, and that we not be wed to any particular bent or slant. I think often it's tempting to want to know what judicial philosophy means, because I think often it's a way for lay people to sort of help to understand how a judge might be thinking. I think in the very same way that partisan labels can be dangerous about how one does their job, I think those kinds of labels can be too. And the other thing I think about philosophies, whether one is conservative or judicial activist or whatever those terms are, I mean, I think they tend to be used in a pejorative way. And I don't think that that really has a role in our work, because I think that in order to really fairly assess how judges do our work, I think it's the most reflective opportunity to do that is by our records.
Yeah. So how would you describe the key principles of free enterprise?
I would say that they involve the consumer really moving the market and determining what the demand is. I have to tell you that I was an economics and political science major 100 years ago, and that businesses really be allowed to respond to that demand in their own way. That the role of government be limited, and that and that there be a real opportunity for businesses to explore their own way of doing businesses within the confines of the law.
Mhm,
And I think
mhm.
it's important to say that the government's role is limited because we all are subject to the rule of law in every single facet of our life in some
Mm.
way. But I
Yeah,
think it might be a generalization around what free enterprise really means.
yeah. So what kind of jobs or interests or volunteer activities did you take part in college and then in law school?
In college, I worked in the office where the which allowed people to have their. I mean, at the time we were not nearly as animated as we are now, but that would allow or prohibit people from having their meals
Okay.
college campus. So I
Yeah.
monitored whether or not people had enough availability on their cards to determine whether or not they could
Mm.
have breakfast or not. I did that. And I also worked at O'Charlie's as a server. And I worked at uh, um, another restaurant, and I don't know why I'm blocking. Oh, the Old Spaghetti Factory in Nashville, Tennessee. I worked there. And then in law school, I worked at two law firms. One was a personal injury law firm, and the other one was it was the Oak Ridge Laboratories.
Mm.
Uh, and then I also, right after law school, worked at O'Charlie's again.
Couldn't get enough of O'Charlie's.
Got enough at
Their
O'Charlie's.
dessert is very good, so I understand. Yeah, yeah. What would you say is your greatest accomplishment in your personal life and then also in your legal career?
And let me just say this about my activities
Oh, yes.
in law school. I also did student government kinds of activities.
Mm.
I was a house chairwoman or an RA, I guess we call them now, in college, and in law school, I was very active in moot court and trial
Mm.
advocacy and that kind of a thing. And then lots of benevolent kinds of things like feeding the hunger. And I'm sorry, your next question was.
Yeah, it's what would you say is your greatest accomplishment in your personal life and then in your legal career?
The greatest accomplishment in my personal life, and I don't know if it's really fair to say that it's my accomplishment because my husband was involved, and we have twin sons from 19 who are really
Wow.
fantastic people. And I don't know that that's my accomplishment, but I'm so super proud of them, and I just love them so dearly. And
We can
I'm
count that. Yeah.
proud of them for their accomplishments. I'm proud
Mm.
of the people that they become, and I just really cherish them.
Mm.
And probably in my professional life, I don't know. There have been many. I mean, I read to elementary schools, and I don't know that that's a professional accomplishment, but I think it's a really important um, opportunity to really be able to give back and to be able to be in touch with communities,
Mhm.
and see the brain power of first graders. And I'm saying I read to them, but they read to me. Which is even more fascinating. I don't have any young little ones running around my house
Mhm.
anymore. I'm certainly very honored and so thrilled to serve as the Chief Justice for the Supreme Court of North Carolina. I'm honored that we're able to carry on and actually make a lot of headway in the midst of a pandemic with
Mm.
so many of our programming around our courts. And I guess that's an accomplishment, but I'm just honored. It doesn't have to be this way, and so I never take that for granted.
Yeah, yeah. So what is your vision for the future of the judicial system? What changes would you advocate and why?
Well, the Chief Justice is the leader of the Supreme Court of North Carolina, and she is also the leader of the entire judicial branch of government. We are in the process of working through e-courts. I'm embarrassed to tell you, Anna, that in 2020, we are still using MS-DOS systems, and we just really must
Wow.
somewhere else. So we have moved our contract along so that we can make sure that any, not just lawyer, but any person who um, wishes to use the court records at any court in the state will be able to use their own personal devices and be able to look up so much of that information themselves. I think that kind of access is really important. I think it's important that as we think about being in the middle of this pandemic, there are a lot of folks suffering.
Mhm.
And so we know that substance abuse is up. And I think the courts will have a role in being responsive to that, in increasing the number of substance abuse treatment courts that we have. We are a state that's the 9th largest in the nation, roughly a population of 10 million. We have about 1 million veterans in North Carolina, and we only have about 4 veterans courts. And for folks who gave so much to this nation and to the state, it seems to me that the courts really ought to be more responsive to some of their needs. And so much of what they've experienced around PTSD and other things really aren't criminal behavior, and so we shouldn't treat them as criminals.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and there are a host of other things that I'm really excited about that we're doing around faith and justice, and bringing clergy and places of worship and lawyers together around how we can serve communities. And so there are so many opportunities to really move our courts forward in North Carolina.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. What would you say is the theme of all of that, that work that you're seeing move forward and that you're pushing for? What would you say is the theme? If you
Wow.
can, if there is a theme.
I think it's probably fair to say access to justice,
Okay.
or service to North Carolinians.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time and being willing to speak with me and share a little bit more about you and your vision with our membership at NCFREE. Where can they go to learn more about you?
You may go to chiefjusticebeasley.com. And I want to thank you, Anna, and your membership for your consideration in this election. I'm thankful that you understand the importance of judicial elections. A lot of folks don't. And I really do appreciate your consideration.
Well, awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much again for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of the day and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you.